there's. Okay, so welcome to the Adam Messer Show, and I am your host, Adam Messer, here with my special guest today, Michele Tracy Berger, who has been on the show before. If you remember last year, we were talking with her about her new book, Renew You, and that book has been doing really well. And actually, she's actually won a new award, so we're going to be talking about that, and we're going to be talking about some writing stuff because she teaches writing workshops and all that, and we're going to be talking about reading and all kinds of fun stuff. So welcome, Michele. Thank you so much for coming back on the show today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Adam. I'm just delighted to be here and so tickled to be a guest again. So
I know. I loved our conversation last time. I really had so much fun talking with you last time we were on.
Me too.
So yeah, the last time, folks. So Michele, can you kind of give everybody just like a little brief overview of who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I am a scholar. I'm a creative writer. I'm a creativity coach, and I'm also a pug lover. I mostly write speculative fiction, but I've been known to write poetry and creative nonfiction. And pretty much everything I write in the speculative fiction world has usually a tinge of horror to it. And last year I had my first novella come out. My first novella came out last year and called Renew You, and that's about a mysterious virus that gets seemingly transmitted through an everyday hair care product. So I like to write. Yeah, I like to write about.
Real quick on that, with that lady
Yeah.
that put the Gorilla Glue in her hair, I feel so bad for her. But I mean, your story when we were talking about it last year was kind of modeled off of real life stuff, right? Like you kind of had some real life elements in there. Can you kind of dive a little deeper into that real quick before we move on?
Absolutely. So my tagline is what if a trip to the beauty salon could kill you? So it really takes place in the 1990s, and it follows two characters. One, her name is Kat, and the other is Constancia. And they both come across this product called Renew You that is billed as an everyday hair care relaxer. It's directed toward women of color, and they both use it, and very strange things start to happen. And they go to the doctor, as do many women in the novel, in the novella, and they find that, first it gets diagnosed as a mysterious rash, and then over time, there's a major epidemic. And the last time I was on the show, Adam, we were talking about kind of the inspiration for that. So it deals with conspiracies and female friendships and kind of beauty politics, but it also is based on an actual real life case. So in the 90s, there was a product called Rio, and that was billed as a natural hair care product. And it was, this was at the time of the beginning of infomercials, and it was billed as, all natural elements and organic. And, after people used it, within 2 years, there was a class action lawsuit. And so showing that basically the product didn't have really any natural ingredients in it. And so I kind of used that as inspiration, and I took the stakes higher, which is what's great about speculative fiction, science fiction, is that you can magnify these things. So I sort of thought about, well, what if something like this really not only happened, but it happened and it carried a virus.
Yeah, I it's crazy because and your book has nothing to do with the lady at all, but for the folks out there, if you haven't heard the story, there was a woman who she was looking for one type of like hair gel product, and I think it was called Gorilla something or another, and she ended up using like Gorilla Glue in her hair. And the poor lady, like, she just had a breakdown, and she went on the social media, and she was, just upset because this stuff would not wash out. Right. And I think she's been to a dermatologist and all this other stuff, trying to, get treatment, and, just feel so bad. But, I think the premise with your book is like people are expecting like, hey, I want to, do something, for my hair. I want to do something that's like all natural and all that, and then it being based off of a true story, or having not necessarily based off of a true story, but being kind of inspired off of it. It's like it almost, like with spec fiction, it's almost one of those things where sci-fi, spec fiction, or whatever. It's like truth sometimes can be stranger than fiction, and
absolutely.
And then we also have the liberty, like you were talking about with being a writer, to kind of even take it to that next level, saying, well, what if a virus happened from it or whatever, and it causes epidemic or whatever. And it's just so crazy to me how life and fiction and life, they mirror each other sometimes.
Well, and absolutely. And I wrote the novella many years ago, and so it was interesting having it published last year, and it came out right before coronavirus. And so, just sort of thinking about, in the 90s, one of the reasons why I said in the 90s is, obviously sort of pre-cell phones, pre-internet, and kind of thinking about how ideas about things spread and rumors. And what's so interesting is obviously as we experience coronavirus, we see similar kinds of things around conspiracies and, rumors. And so it's just so interesting, those kind of parallels. But also I wanted to play with the idea of, people we don't always know what are in our products, right? And so companies market products, and we take them on face value. And I wanted to kind of play with what are the push-pull factors that, were impacting these characters in the 90s. And it's so interesting you said that about the Gorilla Glue, the story, because in the last couple of years, we've seen some interesting stories now looking at women and hair, and I did not see I think it was on Hulu, I haven't seen it yet, called the film called Bad Hair, but that's also kind of playing a little bit with this idea. And I think for me as a speculative fiction writer, I hadn't really seen a lot of work looking at adornment issues, looking at beauty politics, and looking at kind of the potential horror or challenges within them. So it's a really fun area to play in.
Well, I mean, beauty products, and not just when I say beauty, I mean like any kind of what do you call it? Oh my gosh, I'm having like one of those moments. Any kind of grooming product. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Any kind of grooming product. That's a multi-billion-dollar industry, right? And
absolutely
big business. And then the biggest thing is it plays into our vanity. It plays into like grooming and vanity, and so it plays a lot into our ego, right? And so it is one of those things. It's like you would want those products to be regulated. In my opinion, you'd want those products to be regulated just like you would for your food and drugs, because anything that we're using, like topical, because your hair, your skin, any of that kind of stuff, you don't want to be dangerous. You don't want it, causing health issues or problems,
Absolutely. And I tell people that, what was fun about researching this is that we see a lot of, this is not an unusual thing that happens. So if you look at all the major kind of multinational global brands, you will find that there are lawsuits around the kinds of ingredients that are used and how that kind of affects people. So this is a very cyclical thing. And the other thing I say to people, which is kind of interesting, is, we think about hair, and hair is very gendered. It's very racialized in some ways. But, everyone does something with their hair. Men, women, no matter what background.
Across all cultures, across all backgrounds.
Right, absolutely. Right. So right. And so we're all using some sort of, grooming products. And I tell men, because I've, in different interviews I've done, I was like, Rogaine, like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but, you might want to think about, the kinds of things we put into our bodies. Right. And so, but what's so great about horror is that you get to just,
kind of take the freedom with it and kind of just run with it, huh?
Yeah, and kind of, play. And then I guess there's this whole area, subcategory called body horror, which I am just sort of learning about, and I wasn't sort of consciously thinking about that. But it's also, Renew You is also about, the collective experience too. So being misdiagnosed, kind of getting not such great treatment from the medical providers in the story, and how that allows the main characters to kind of come together and try to figure out what is going on.
And I want to just say something real quick with that. I am a strong advocate of when you go to whatever care physician or whoever you're getting medical care from, especially I'm directing this towards women more so than men, but this can be for everybody. Typically what I've seen, and reports are out there, you can do all the research you want, but I've seen this over and over again from people in my own life that sometimes women are not taken seriously when they have an issue or concern, and they're just kind of being dismissed. And it's one of those things. If you have a health issue and you have a health problem and you have a provider who's giving you that kind of like runaround, or you don't feel like you're being heard or being taken care of, get a different opinion. Get another person who will listen to you and take you seriously. And I'm just going to share a personal experience I have in my own life with my wife. She had a primary care physician, and she was complaining about some pains in her chest. And the doctors, because my wife has some weight issues, and the doctor was like, well, it's probably because of your weight, yada, yada, yada. You should lose some weight, whatever. And so they were just kind of being dismissive of it. Well, then my wife was talking to me about it. And I was like, oh, no. You're going to go to somebody else and see somebody else and, whatever. So she saw this other doctor, and, they ordered an x-ray or a mammogram. And she was in her early 30s, okay? I think late 20s, early 30s. And they ordered a mammogram. And come to find out, she had, a growth, and it was
oh my goodness.
Yeah, well, it wasn't malignant, but it was benign. The benign's the one that's not cancer, right? But at the same time, it was a growth that was not being checked, and by this other physician who just was dismissive of her. And so, I've always been an advocate, especially like, my wife is from Mexico City, so she's, a person of color or whatever. But especially if you feel like you're not getting hurt, if you're not being hurt, don't take that as the answer. Go see someone else. Don't be dismissive of, oh, I'm just, might be just in my head. It's not. It's better to go get it checked out and be serious about it. I mean, all jokes aside, all kidding aside, we like horror and we like fiction and all that good stuff, and what's good entertainment. Seriously, take your health seriously. And if someone else is not treating you with the same dignity and respect, fire that person. Get somebody new, and go
Absolutely.
Do what you got to do. And I think horror and fiction is a good way that we, like you brought up these different issues, and they reflect real life. So it's I feel like it's important. And I know I'm like kind of going off a little bit on that, but it's just something I see over and over again. And we've got to do better, everybody. We've got to do better. And healthcare right now, especially with the system being so taxed as it is, I get it, but at the same time, if you're having an issue and you're not being heard, or you don't feel like you're being taken seriously, or if you feel like they're just, even if they just don't seem like they can make time to listen to you while you're in the office with them, get a new person. Don't take that for their word. So.
Oh my goodness, that's so powerful, because I'm just glad that it was benign and your wife is, fine. But, we have these terms about racial and gender, and just generally health disparities. Mm-hmm. And I think what you're saying is so powerful. I think particularly, if you're coming in particular from a marginalized community or underserved community, mm-hmm. Sometimes people don't always think they have the power or, discretion to speak up. But I think anyone, like you're saying, when they feel like they're not really being taken seriously in the medical encounter, they really definitely should see another provider. And in many ways, I grew up during the HIV/AIDS crisis. Mm-hmm. And so even though the book is not referencing that per se, this whole idea of epidemics and viruses and also patient-doctor interaction mm-hmm. is really important to me. So, yeah, I think what you're saying is just really powerful for people, because, doctors have, and the majority of doctors are definitely trying to serve their, patients and all of that. But if you're not feeling in that encounter that you're being respected, you've got to take action. Absolutely.
And the thing for her, she went to a doctor that some of the women that I work with were using, and because I was really angry about it. I was like, I felt like my wife wasn't being listened to and whatever, and but luckily we were able to do that, right? But a lot of folks out there, they don't feel like that, especially if they're underrepresented or underserved in a community, and that's very prevalent, unfortunately. They don't feel like they have options. You have options. You don't have to just accept or settle that, oh, well, it might be just in my head. No, it might just be that person doesn't want to give you the correct medical care, and even though it might not be malpractice, it might not be the best interest for you. So, go to someone who's going to have the best interest for you. That's all I'm saying. And I mean, anyway, I could go on for days and days and days about that because it's a hot button for me. But we are at the 15-minute mark, Michelle, and I need to do station ID, and Sebastian's going to play some music. But I am so glad that just a final word on that, or my final thought on that is that I'm so glad that you tackled that in your book. And and you also try to bring it to like because a lot of times people are like, oh, if it's a series like a PSA type thing, people aren't going to listen. But if you bring it to them in a story and you say, hey, they're going to be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. We shouldn't ignore healthcare issues, or we shouldn't diminish other people's opinions and their thoughts, and we shouldn't be disrespectful to them. And
our job is to tell a good story. So that was my primary job. But being able to write about these things in a way that people might think critically about them is an added plus.
That's awesome. So everybody, thank you for tuning in today. I really appreciate you listening to us here on WRUU. We are 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings Community Radio with Global Soul. I want to give a shout out to Terry and Darlene Dremel, who sent me a text message, Michelle, that they're listening to us live here in Savannah. So that's pretty cool. They're awesome.
We love that.
Yeah,
awesome.
And I want to give a shout out to the folks who have been listening on the podcast, and it's one of those things where I really love people who are listening to the show and they're enjoying being able to hear like your story and the other folks that have been on here, because I have so much fun doing this with the station. And I just want to share this with everybody. Sebastian's going to play in just a second here, but WRUU is an all volunteer community radio station. So I don't get paid to do this. I'm not paying Michelle for her interview. We don't have any staff that are paid. All the folks here are unpaid volunteers. We do have expenses. Sometimes we have to hire an engineer to do stuff for our equipment and that kind of thing. But that's not there's not a full-time staff. We pay for like our electric. We pay for our lease, our water, equipment. Like the computers. We pay for our licensing fees. There's all these different factors that go into just keeping the shows running. And we have over 60 hosts with a large variety of different shows, from talk shows to music shows to you name it. As far as a community radio station goes, we have a wide variety of entertainment and educational programming and things like that. So if you enjoy this show, please consider even donating $1. Even if it's just one time, you want to just donate $1, those dollars count. They help a lot, so I appreciate it. And you can do that on WRUU.org. Super easy. You just go on there. There's a button that says donate, and it will take your information. And if you want to do a one-time donation, or if you want to set up a monthly donation or whatever. And if you're listening to this on the podcast, it's international. You can go on WRUU.org. You can listen to it, because Michelle, believe it or not, I have quite a few people who listen to the show on the podcast from India. people from
Oh,
Scotland.
that's wonderful.
Yeah, from Scotland, England, Australia. I just saw we had some people from Japan listening, and I was like, "This is so cool." So WRU is like international. So, Bass, you mind playing a little bit for us? Everybody, this is Sebastian Messer. You gonna play your new jam today? All right. And his band is called Krieger. Awesome, Bass. Thank you very much. Michelle, were you able to hear that?
I was, and I love the format of the show. It's just it's just so good, and yeah, I love hearing the music, and it's great to have global listeners. It's really exciting, Adam.
I was surprised.
Fantastic.
Yeah, because with the show is live, right? So I do the radio show on Sundays, and then I take the shows and I put them on my podcast. And the podcast, when I first started off, it was just the one website, and it would put it out. And then now the show is like on Apple Podcasts. It's on Audible. It's on Amazon Music. I have it on YouTube. There are a bunch of other ones, like it's on iHeartRadio. And I've slowly but surely been able to get it on the different distribution channels. And I have been really surprised at the listening. Now I don't have tons and tons of listeners, but last month I had the best month for the podcast downloads, and with YouTube, I had like a ton of new listeners. So it just varies from month to month and episode to episode. But I appreciate every one of the folks listening, and being able to talk with folks like yourself. Creative people. That's what I love doing. I just enjoy it so much. It's so much fun, especially, like with the kind of stuff that you're doing. Like you write, you also teach a writer's workshop, don't you?
Yeah, I want to say a couple things about that. One, I just want to acknowledge this is the way we build creative community in the 21st century, right? Like this is. And when we were growing up, we didn't have access to this. There were gatekeepers, and I guess in terms of doing community radio, that was more accessible for people. But now, the way we can find our tribe, so to speak, is through these amazing platforms. I just want to acknowledge it, that you're doing the creative community gathering, which is so important. And I think in terms of what you showcase, people who come from different walks of life in terms of their creative passions. But I just wanted to acknowledge that. And one question,
Thank you.
I will answer your question, but just, are you on Spotify? Is that?
Yeah, it's on Spotify, as well. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I forgot to mention Spotify. I use Libsyn for my hosting, and I believe Libsyn and Spotify are either I don't know exactly their relationship, but they're partners or something like that. But yeah, I like Spotify a lot. And the nice thing about it, the distribution, is I put it out there, and the thing with Libsyn is they send it out for me. I don't have to go to each particular website. I had to set them up originally.
Sure.
I had to set them up, and but as far as that goes, it's like it sends it out for me. So that takes a lot of the headache off of the extra production work or whatever. But yeah, Spotify is another good one.
So just to follow up on your question, I am also a creativity coach, and my coaching practice is called the Creative Pickle, and my tagline is "Tickle Your Genius Awake." And I do a lot of work. Thank you. Yeah, it just, you can't help but smile when you say the creative pickle.
Yeah.
And I, work with writers and other creative people around the typical challenges. How do I create smack dab in the middle of my day? Issues around inner critics. How do you deal with inner critics? Issues of perfectionism and procrastination. And during 2020, I think many of us, felt called to kind of be out there to support the writing and creative community, because so many people, our routines were disrupted. Many people were having so many challenges with just kind of being able to feel creative during, kind of all the things that were happening. So I actually built in a number of writing retreats. First, I was doing these write-ins where I would just gather writers together, and we would get together on Zoom, and I do a mindfulness meditation, and then have some writing prompts.
Not to interject, but I love mindfulness.
Yeah.
And I love mindfulness-based stress reduction as well as a form of meditation. Oh my gosh.
It's so powerful. And, I tell people, it basically, you're creating this context to make yourself resilient regarding distractions, because just like when you're trying to do mindfulness work, you're returning to your breath, you're returning to the, being centered. And that's what we have to do as writers, because we can start being distracted. So
can I ask you, since we're talking about that, could you give like a little 30-second, just a little mindfulness thing real quick that the listeners can, and I know it sounds I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but could you give them like just a little technique that they can use right now?
Absolutely. Sure. So I will just then ask people, we'll just go into this right now, which is fantastic. So you always have the breath with you, so you can always be mindful. But I'm going to ask people, if you're listening and if you're in a place where you can do this, you can just have your feet, if you're sitting in a chair, you just have your feet on the floor, feeling really grounded. And then I'd like you to, and you can do this if you're just sitting on your bed or wherever, just sort of do a little squeeze of your thighs, and then kind of touch your belly, and then do a little squeeze of your arms. And this, before we kind of get into doing the breath work, we want to ground the body. So that's really important to do. So now we've kind of done that, and then bringing your attention into your belly, feeling the belly as you're taking a breath in, feeling that belly just kind of come really full. And if you haven't closed your eyes already, it's a great time to do this, or soften your gaze. Beautiful. And then when you're exhaling, you're just exhaling through the nose very gently. And you're breathing in, feeling that flow of the breath, and exhaling. And you can always ask yourself, where in the body am I breathing? And what is the quality of my breath? And so mindfulness allows us, and there are many techniques, but it allows us to come back to the present moment and to witness whatever's going through our mind. So some people may be thinking about, their lunch or dinner, or they may be thinking about the next thing they want to know about related to sci-fi, or they may be thinking about, they have an important meeting coming up tomorrow. So you just watch that, but you pay attention to the breath, because the mind will follow the breath. So anyway, so that's kind of,
Yeah, thank you very much for doing that. I love.
Thank you so much for asking me.
I love those, and I love guided meditations. I just, it's so relaxing. Michele, have you ever fallen asleep when you're meditating?
No, that's perfectly fine to do.
I have, and I wake up so relaxed. I'm like, I just feel like my whole body is just all that, stress that we hold. It's just like,
yes.
Even just now, like I was doing it while I was just listening to you. I was doing it, going along with you. And I just, even a couple of just breathing seconds like that is just so relaxing. I mean, like you feel like your stress just kind of melts away, you know?
Right. Well, and since you practice, as you know, we have the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system, and so it helps us kind of refine, that fight or flight feeling that, and a lot of times we don't even recognize, like you said, how much stress we're carrying. So you can kind of think about mindfulness and breath techniques to, take your foot off the gas. So we go, right? And the reason why I integrate this into my retreats for writers is because, we obviously everyone's dealing with high stress right now, and it's harder to create from that place. And so if we can just find, if we can kind of get ourselves focused on the work ahead of us, we're usually in a better place to write or create. And so that became a series of, that kind of work became a series of writing retreats that I did during the late summer and fall, and also just doing a lot of games and playing with writers, because a lot of times, we've kind of lost, or it felt more difficult to access that playful side of us as well. And usually if we're not relaxed, we're not usually feeling playful, right? So they kind of go hand in hand. And I don't know if you felt this, Adam, because you have been so consistently, from what I can see, obviously you're on your Facebook and all of that, so consistently active and creative. So you might not have had that dip. And I didn't have that dip. For me, I went kind of even deeper into the creative work. But for people who did,
I did have that
dip,
I did.
You did.
And I got to table that thought for just a second, because we got to do the mid break.
Yeah.
But
sure.
I did, and I want to talk with you about that for sure, because I've been on both sides of the chasm there. So be right back, everybody.
What does it mean when we say that WRUU is a community radio station? It doesn't just mean that we invite the community to create programming. And it doesn't just mean that we are a voice for the community. It also means that we are counting on the community to keep us going. And you are the community. Almost all of our modest budget comes from small annual or monthly donations from listeners like you. You get to enjoy our community-focused programming because many others have stepped forward to do their part. Now do your part by joining our community of listener donors. Go to WRUU.org right now and make a one-time or monthly donation. And thank you for supporting Savannah's community radio station, 107.5 FM.
This is a message from the Georgia State Department of Public Health. There is a State of Georgia hotline people can call with questions or if they think they may have been exposed to the COVID-19 virus. It is 1-844-442-2681. If you believe you're experiencing symptoms of COVID-19 or have been exposed to the novel coronavirus, please contact your primary care doctor, an urgent care clinic, or your local federally qualified healthcare center. Please do not show up at an emergency room or healthcare facility unannounced. More information can be found at dph.georgia.gov. This portion of WRUU Savannah Soundings programming is provided by listeners and by Brighter Day Natural Foods. Brighter Day Natural Foods has been serving Savannah's healthy food and supplement needs since 1978. It is located at the corner of Bull Street and Park Avenue. They have available online ordering and curbside delivery, and now a walk-up window for smoothies, juices, and sandwiches from the deli. They are open from 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Saturday, and 12 to 5:30 p.m. on Sunday. More information can be found at brighterdayfoods.com.
All right, everybody, and welcome back. Thank you so much. And Michelle, are you there?
I am here.
Okay, cool. I had just plugged it back in. So right before the break, y'all, we were talking about, Michelle was bringing up about diving deeper into the creative side of things. And just to share with you, Michelle, wow, that this last year has been such just a huge change for everybody. I have kept the radio show going. I've been in the studio But what I've done is I've not had any guests in studio live with me, just for everybody's safety as well. We can have 3 people in the studio, but I haven't been doing that. But one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to continue doing the interviews, because I felt like it was important, like you're talking about with the creative stuff. The radio show has been great. Last year I launched, matter of fact, 2/23, so 2 days from now will be the first year anniversary of launching FIYAH Books. In Maine.
Yay!
Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah, and I'm so excited about that. And it was still, it was originally part of my Savannah Quill thing, and it's still part of Savannah Quill. But I wanted to separate the books from the charitable stuff that I do with the literacy side. Did that. The first anthology came out in October. I wrote a short novella, about 30,000 word novella last February. And then I wrote a 10,000 word short novella for the anthology. And then I wrote a couple of short stories or whatever. But I didn't reach like the goal of writing with the stuff that I wanted to write. I kind of had that point where I was like, what's going on? What am I doing? And I was working, and this is the thing. It's like I've been on a temporary layoff, for like 2 months now. But I was working. I had a little brief time off last summer, but for the most part, I was working. And so this last 2 months, I kind of hit that, like, oh man, what am I doing? So my friend Josh and I, Josh Vasquez, he and we have become accountability partners for each other with our writing. And
I love that.
Yeah, and so he's been with me since the beginning when I started doing Savannah Quill. This other guy named Windstrock, who's also been with us. So now Josh is going to be putting his Savannah zombie novel series out with FIYAH Books, and so I've got different projects that are going on with FIYAH Books. And I am going to be redoing my vampire series stuff with FIYAH Books. So I have the reason, and I'm not trying to plug myself here, or I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything like that. It's not that. I'm just trying to share with you that I have hit that bottom where I'm like, I have that creator's guilt, I want to call it, where like I know that I want to do these things. And I see other people doing really cool stuff, and I try not to compare myself to them. But then at the same time, I'm like, well, I've got these other story ideas, and I've got this other stuff, and boom, boom, boom. But having this accountability partnership with my friend Josh is really great. And then when you're talking about resiliency, my friend Matt Lastalia and we have a show called The Matt and Adam Show. It's just a short little podcast, 15-minute. We talk about grit, doing the work, and why does it matter. Matt is a resiliency coach. And and so we talk about resiliency, we talk about grit, we talk about we just did this series called the SWOT analysis, but like more of a personalized SWOT analysis, and we just finished that up yesterday. So it's kind of crazy because yes, I have been very productive, but at the same time, I've also had a lot of that petered out type feeling, like, oh, I'm just beat, you know what I mean? And I think it's situational. I also think it's environmental, personal. I mean, there's all these different factors that go into it. And the reason why I'm saying all that is because I love the fact that you do your business and your coaching and you address these kind of things. And one final thing before I turn it back over to you. There was and I love what you were talking about a minute ago or a few minutes ago, but there was a podcast that I accidentally came across. It's by a lady named Savannah Gilbo. I was trying to pull up the Savannah Zombie novel series, but I was driving. I had to do it hands free, and Apple Podcasts kept bringing up this girl's podcast, and I was like, I was kind of frustrated because I didn't want to listen to her. I didn't know who this was. I wasn't subscribed.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
Kept pulling it up. So I was like, whatever. So I let it play. Man, I'm telling you, and I'm not trying to push my beliefs on anybody, but I feel like this was God saying, hey, listen to this. This lady's podcast was the subject matter was you can change the world with B- work. And I was like, why are you talking directly to me? why are you picking at my perfectionism? Why are you like telling me like it's okay to do B- work and that I can change the world? Why are you telling me this? It felt like she had opened up a raw nerve and just poked me with it. Like, you're holding yourself up because you're just like trying to be too perfect. And I tell you what, I listened to it about 3 or 4 times and I was like, you know what? Yeah. And then Josh and I started doing this accountability thing about 2 months later. Here we are. And I'm having a great time with it. So yeah, I have been there. When you were saying that, I wanted to make sure you knew, like, yes, I have been at the bottom there, and I have felt, and I still feel that creator guilt a lot. But at the same time, I'm kind of like getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I need to be okay with B- work, and I need to actually put more work out and not just sit on it. I can't tell the story. It just sit in my head, you know?
Oh my goodness. Everything you said, I think, is echoing across, the people who are listening, because the things that you said are so central in that one, the things that you did, you started to ask questions about, okay, this is not working, the way I was working because of COVID-19, it's not working now. So that was the first step, and you did that. And then you found new things to do in that would keep you connected to your work. So the accountability buddy, super, super huge. So I've known writers who, they go in their writing cave, so to speak. They never needed to be in groups. They never, did any of that, who were then like during COVID-19, like, oh my goodness, I need accountability. I need to show up with people. So the fact that you did that is super, super important. I just want to underscore that. The other thing that I wanted to underscore too is that it sounds like you also do mindfulness and you do relaxation techniques. And the reason why that is so important is because it tends to help quiet that inner critic, which is, connected to perfectionism often.
Oh yeah. That guy and I go round and round, Michelle. We fight. And I'm like, okay, we go round and round about that.
Well, I will suggest some other things besides fighting, but then this podcast, which sounds amazing, the fact that we hold ourselves back. So there are the two things, we people who tend to have perfectionistic tendencies, a lot of times they have a hard time just evaluating their work. So what I always say to them is that, they have to remember that really when they think they're doing like 70%, they're really doing 95%. So if they can kind of understand that and relax their standards a little bit, they can get the work out. So that's very different than people who are procrastinators.
Oh, wow.
But you kind of, and there's actually a psychological term called satisficing. So it's like satisfying, but it's with a C. It's called satisficing. And so you basically tell yourself, okay, I am going to be satisfied with 70% effort at this moment, but knowing that is really, a lot for you. And
did you just hear my mind blow? Did you just hear my mind blow, Michelle? Like literally, like it might, you just like when that, my brain was just like, because that's the first time I've heard that. First of all, if you feel like you're doing 70%, you're probably actually doing like 90%. And then being able to say, hey, I can be satisfied with this level of work. And then you do it. My brain just was like, boom. I can't believe it's already the 45. We got to do hold that thought for a second. Okay, Michelle?
Sure.
Oh my gosh. You just laid some knowledge on me today. Thank you. Everybody, you're tuning in today to WRUU LP Savannah, Georgia, 107.5 FM, WRUU.org. We are Savannah Soundings, community radio with global soul. Sebastian, would you take it away again real quick? All right, here's Sebastian, everybody. Yes, sir. Thank you. That was awesome, dude. Oh my gosh.
That was lovely.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is, Michelle, I the way that the phone works with this is I have to like hold it up so you can hear speakerphone, but when the podcast comes through, you should be able to hear like the mic'd up version or whatever. So, but yeah, oh my gosh, that was good. So, all right, I'm about to mute my mic because I want to hear. Can you repeat that about the perfectionism? I just want to hear like this lay down, again.
Absolutely. So I think it's important for people to just know we all have inner critics, and they emerge at different times, right? And as we become more successful, we don't always get rid of them, but we know how to deal with them. So I think that's just a really important thing to say. And inner critics are meant to protect us. So they were developed through our personal experiences in school. And so they protect us from like shame, from, fear, from all sorts of things. But when they become a problem is when they start interfering and sort of, they're in the driver's seat as opposed to passenger seat. So for perfectionism, one of the things that I work a lot with folks who have that tendency, and it's basically just to remind them that usually they are holding themselves to such a high standard. So it can be helpful to them to know, like, oh, if I feel like I'm doing 70%, I'm actually really doing 95% compared to everybody else, right? So, and in psychology, that term is called satisficing. And so you tell yourself, okay, I need to get the work done, and it may not be my best work. I'm not going to judge that right this minute. I'm going to get it out, and I'm going to shoot for my 75, 80%, knowing that the quality of my work is probably going to be higher than what I had imagined, because that's just how y'all perfectionists roll. Does that make sense? Is that helpful?
Michelle, will you please make a PSA type video of this same thing? Like, I'm not even kidding, because I have, as an adult, okay, and I want to address this for young people, and anybody really of any age. It doesn't matter, but especially young people, though. As an adult, I have spent my entire life as a lifelong learner, right? So my brain is tickled, my genius is tickled when I hear something that is new to me, right? And this just simple wrap up that you gave me now is powerful. Like, it is just incredibly powerful. I just love that, because there are so many folks out there who are perfectionists, and I'll give you, like a good example of our conversation today. When you were saying, hey, you might not have experienced this, it's because I do so much work that it comes across that I'm being very productive. I still feel the same way. I still suffer and deal with the same things, even though it might look like I'm doing, a lot. I still feel like I'm not doing what I need to be doing. What I'm saying about that creator's guilt. And so, like, this whole how do you say it again?
Satisficing.
Satisficing.
So just think about satisficing. And
like sacrificing, but satisficing.
Yes.
Okay.
That is a real psychology term that is used. And I think it's important also to understand that, we can give inner critics different jobs over time. So, and I can't remember if I had talked about this the last time I was on the show, but, I had an inner critic. I named her Relentless Roofie because she was someone, nothing was ever good enough. I was never, she was really worried about me balancing out my creative work and my academic work. And so, and one of my mentors really helped me with this. And we basically assigned her a job in my mind, in my imagination, I assigned her to be security detail for Air Force One, because that's where you need a perfectionist. You need a perfectionist serving on Air Force One, making sure that, president and vice president are safe, right? So you can think about you can ask questions about that inner critic. Like, you can ask them to you can do a creative exercise where you say, tell me your concerns and complaints. And then you just listen and you just write, you do free writing, and you listen, what are their concerns and complaints? And then you thank them. It's really important. You thank your inner critic because they're trying to keep you safe, right? Or they're trying to protect you in some way. And then you assign them a new job. So that is one way to begin to work with that inner territory, because that the perfectionist is usually, they're telling us we're not good enough, we're not doing it right. And that really gets in the way. It interferes with just getting the work out. So your job, and you know this, and I'm just saying this because you know this, our job is not quality control. Our job is production at most parts. Yes, we do, we obviously will have to evaluate it, and that's a different level of engaging, but our main job is just to get the work out, like you said. So once you get the work out, then you can, massage it and obviously refine it. But inner critics, the perfectionist, usually stops us from getting the work out.
Well, I love that. I just absolutely love that. That's going in my toolbox. It's in my toolbox now, Michele. So thank you very much for that gift.
Oh, yay.
That's
I'm
wonderful.
So glad.
Like, it really is. I mean, like, that is just a fantastic, and I'm serious about you doing a video about it, because that would be so awesome. It's just that little clip, just that one part about oh my gosh, I'm still cramping I want to say sacrificing, but it's
satisficing.
Satisficing.
Yeah,
I keep wanting to, like, my brain keeps wanting to flip it up.
Thank you so much for that idea, because I do have a YouTube channel and was playing. That was one of the things. So one of my responses last year was I really got in action. So
nice.
Everything was falling apart. Feeling lots of grief and overwhelm, but it really helped for me to kind of drill down. And so one of the things I did, actually started putting, just reading some of my material, short clips on YouTube. So thank you for that idea. And because I love talking about, because we often struggle with these things alone. And I know you, because you've interviewed a lot of creative people and you understand the creative process, you probably have been, working on aspects of this for a while, but it's helpful just to say, okay, this pattern is here. What does it mean? And how can we, navigate with it and navigate around it? So I'm going to take you up on that.
That is, video. I'm telling you, that is an incredible tool. I mean, and yes, again, not patting myself on the back here, but I started writing freelance for the Savannah Morning News in 2014, doing the same kind of things, interviewing, creative people. This radio show, I'm going in my third year, and I have over 100 interviews with folks, and not huge numbers or anything like that, but we don't just do sound bites. I talk with people kind of like long format, and it's a casual conversation, so it's not premeditated. It's not like, even before this, we were talking about, like, are there going to be questions? It's like, no, not really. It's more casual conversation, because there's so much I feel like that develops from that, because you do hear a lot of the homogenized, same thing over and over and over again about process. And I don't, I don't find that, as interesting as I do when I hear the stuff about, like, satisficing. You know what I mean? Like that, like the basics. We need the basics. We need to practice the basics. We need to, keep that as our foundation. But the nuance and the daily, like, just learning and developing and working and reworking, and that satisficing, is a new tool for me. That's like another thing. Like, okay, wait a minute. Like when I came across Savannah Gilbo's podcast, Quite Upon Accident, that was another tool. Be okay with being, with B- work, because then you can produce the work. You can finish it.
Yeah.
An idea is great, but man, oh man, is it a good feeling to hold a book in your hand? When you're like, wow, this was me. I wrote that. So
yeah. Yes, and I was just going to add, it just made me think of Nora Roberts. I think this quote is attributed to her. She always says, you can't revise a blank page. Right. So you can't revise a blank page, and so it is getting the work out. And I love this idea of being okay with B- work, just in terms of getting it out. So This is great. We're expanding people's toolkit.
I love it. Michele, we're going to take a break and we'll be back at 4. Real quick, what is your website in case people are listening to the podcast and they want to go and check out your stuff?
Oh, the website is Michele Berger, and that's MicheleBerger.wordpress.com. And I'm actually going to put something up just for your listeners, probably during the break. So we can talk more about that. But I'm going to put a little special up for them.
Okay. Awesome.